A packed room in rural Kansas just forced its own planning commission to back down. Meanwhile, analysts have discovered that more than 2/3 of the electricity America's data centers claim to need may not exist at all. From a $200 million lawsuit in Georgia to a $100 billion campus rising on an old nuclear site. Here's what's really happening behind the AI build-out. We begin in Leavenworth County, Kansas, where residents have decided that showing up quietly is no longer enough. A proposed 1,000-acre hyperscale campus known as Project Bluestem, planned just south of Tonganoxie near Interstate 70, has galvanized a group calling itself Citizens Against Bluestem. Roughly 25 to 30 active members including lawyers, engineers, and lifelong residents who say the project surfaced without adequate public notice. When the County Planning Commission met to take up new data center regulations, opponents packed the room demanding tougher rules on noise, water use, and health impacts. Commissioner Marcus Majure acknowledged the crowd before joining an 8-1 vote to send the regulations back for another look. County commissioners have also passed a 90-day moratorium, and under Kansas law, if opponents gather signatures from owners of 20% of neighboring land, any permit would need a 3/4 supermajority to pass. That kind of organized resistance is now landing squarely in the courts. That resistance has a price tag, and in Georgia a developer is trying to collect it. Shadowbox Studios and an affiliated real estate company called Henrico 183 have sued DeKalb County in Superior Court, asking a judge to declare the county's data center moratorium illegal. The companies say they spent more than $30 million developing a nearly 200-acre property at 3600 International Park Drive in South DeKalb, after county officials assured them a data center would be permitted there. Then the moratorium landed, and it has now been in place more than a year. The lawsuit claims the freeze has slashed the property's value by $200 million, and seeks not just permission to build, but just compensation for what it calls a violation of property rights, plus attorney's fees. A second company has since come forward with a nearly identical complaint. Behind every one of these fights sits a single question: how much power do these projects actually need? And here is where the story turns genuinely surprising. New analysis from Wood Mackenzie finds that more than 2/3 of the electricity being requested for America's AI build-out will almost certainly never be delivered. Grid operators and utilities are sitting on requests totaling 1,066 gigawatts of new data center load, but analysts expect only about 28% of that to ever be committed. That leaves roughly 768 gigawatts of what the industry now calls phantom load. The reason is straightforward: developers, unsure which utility could deliver power fastest and cheapest, simply filed the same project with several utilities at once. Nothing required them to put money down, so every duplicate request landed in an interconnection queue and got counted as real demand. Utilities, grid planners, and state policymakers then built forecasts, rate cases, and power plants around numbers that were never real. Yet for the utilities actually delivering power, the growth is very real indeed. Take Southern Company, one of the largest utilities in the country. Its latest results show data center electricity usage across its system jumped 55%, compared with the same quarter a year ago, and 49% year to date. In raw terms, system-wide data center load pushed past 1.2 gigawatts during the quarter, an increase of more than 500 megawatts in 12 months. That surge helped drive adjusted earnings to $1.13 a share, up 21 cents from a year earlier. But the number that should get everyone's attention is the pipeline. Southern has now signed contracts for 17 gigawatts of large load customers. after adding 6 gigawatts in a single quarter. Among them is Georgia Power's 25-year, 3.2 gigawatt agreement with OpenAI. This is what real, committed demand looks like, and it is arriving faster than almost anyone planned for. But electricity is only half of the resource problem. Water is the other half. In California's Imperial Valley, a water agency has done something almost unheard of. It told a data center no. The Imperial Irrigation District, which delivers Colorado River water across one of the driest corners of the country, denied a developer's request to tap the district's freshwater and wastewater supply for cooling. What would have been among the largest data centers in the state? The developer, Imperial Valley Computer Manufacturing, has responded by suing the public agency. And the Imperial Valley is not alone. In Virginia, the world's largest data center market, state environmental scientists concluded that the Potomac Aquifer east of Interstate 95 cannot support any new industrial withdrawals. A finding that would effectively bar new water-cooled facilities across a huge stretch of the state. Water, long treated as an afterthought in site selection, is quietly becoming the hardest constraint of all, which is why regulators are now scrutinizing these deals far more closely than they used to. Nowhere is that scrutiny sharper than in Georgia, where state regulators have effectively frozen the largest power deal in the state's history. Georgia Power has voluntarily pushed back the start date of its 25-year agreement to supply OpenAI's $20 billion Project Camellia campus in Effingham County, a contract that would deliver 3.2 gigawatts of electricity, one of the biggest single-site power commitments ever made in American technology. The delay came after members of the Public Service Commission signaled they would object to the contract as written. Democratic Commissioner Peter Hubbard asked the panel to formally object, raising concerns about long-term financial liability for ordinary ratepayers in the absence of clean energy provisions. The Natural Resources Defense Council, the Sierra Club, and the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy have all filed objections over the deal's secrecy. Georgia Power now has until August 26 to satisfy the commission. Yet even under that scrutiny, the biggest builds are moving ahead. On the banks of the Ohio River in western Kentucky, one of the strangest and most ambitious projects in the country is taking shape. Brookfield and NextEra Energy are transforming part of the Department of Energy's former Paducah gaseous diffusion plant, a Cold War uranium enrichment site, into what could become one of America's largest AI campuses. The Department of Energy selected Brookfield to lease the land and develop the campus, and picked NextEra to build and own dedicated generation alongside it. At full build-out by 2032, the site targets more than 1.2 gigawatts of compute capacity supported by up to 1.8 gigawatts of utility capacity, with as much as 2 gigawatts of on-site natural gas generation and 2.6 gigawatts of battery storage. The companies say total investment could reach roughly $100 billion over time, with initial operations beginning in 2028. Big Rivers Electric, Jackson Purchase Energy, and Paducah Power System are all partners. And behind projects like this, the financing is getting creative. Which brings us to the money, and to a deal that shows just how far Wall Street will now stretch to fund this build-out. A developer called Zenith Arc has sold $2.25 billion of green bonds to finance a data center and substation in central Oklahoma, backed by a 15-year triple net lease and guarantee from the quantitative trading giant Jane Street. The 5-year notes priced at 99.5 cents on the dollar, yielding nearly 9%, a rich coupon that tells you exactly how investors view the risk. The facility will support 149 megawatts. It's part of a broader shift. Data center sustainable bond issuance climbed to $11.2 billion last year from $7.6 billion the year before. And on the same day, EQT-backed EdgeConX was in talks with Natixis and BBVA to have banks guarantee as much as $2.5 billion in power costs. A letter of credit facility designed purely to lock down electricity. From a packed hearing room in Kansas to a 9% bond in Oklahoma. The pressure is building on every side at once. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, subscribe, leave a like, and drop a comment. It helps us cover more of these stories.